Hey there, welcome to the Catching Up with Casey show. If you are tired of chasing buy-in, frustrated by teams who just can't seem to get on the same page, or over the constant struggle of holding people accountable without feeling like you're micromanaging, this is the show for you. I'm Casey Watts, team leadership expert and the host of this show. I specialize in clarity, collaboration, and character, and I help leaders just like you take teams from chaos to cohesion, from frustration to alignment, so teams can actually work together toward a common purpose instead of against each other as though they are functioning in different organizations. Whether you lead a single team or a team of teams, on this show, we talk about strategies that are going to help you create a culture where accountability and autonomy go hand in hand. Now, with all of that said, let's dive into today's conversation and learn how to lead clarity-driven teams. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to another episode. It's been a little bit since I have published an episode, and I'm really excited to welcome to the show Hunter Flesch. Today, we are bringing clarity to this thing called fighting fires, and Hunter's going to be talking to us about how to fight fires with frameworks, and what he's specifically going to dive into is how APs can build a sustainable tier 2 system. So, Hunter, welcome to the show.
Casey, it's been an honor and a privilege to be here and to get to connect with you. I was blown away when I had you on my podcast, and now I feel like I'm a Casey Watts disciple. I'm a subscriber to the show. I love your message and all the great work you're doing in school. So it's really just a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. I know this is going to be a great conversation just because that's who we are. We are conversational people. And here's what I fear though, Hunter, is that we're going to get started with conversation and we're going to feel like we can't stop, or we chase some rabbits. And I'm just going to let you know, I'm completely okay with chasing rabbits. And I think listeners are pretty accustomed to rabbit chasing on this show.
I'm totally fine with going down rabbit holes. This is where we need that third producer to say stop or press a little button and say, no, next topic, because we'll get to talking. But I'm so excited. It's been too long. So I'm ready for it.
And there's some really exciting news that you have that recently happened. Would you mind sharing that?
Of course. So for those that don't know me or don't follow me, I recently got engaged against all the odds. I was able to lock her down, and definitely am marrying up. So I'm so excited. We get married this December. So my summer break has quickly turned into hyperspeed wedding planning for those that want a little PTSD as they listen to this podcast. I feel like that's the first big challenge of a married couple is to plan your wedding. So we're in the thick of that.
Yeah, I have to say, when I planned my wedding, it literally, this is kind of who I was at the moment. And I still maybe am a little bit this way when it comes to planning events. But my mom kept asking me all these questions about like what I wanted. And I was like, I don't care. It doesn't matter. Whatever. And so eventually she was like, well, why don't you just go take a nap and we'll take care of everything, to being kind of facetious. And I was like, yeah. That sounds great. Let's do that. Let's let everybody else take care of this. So, Hunter, tell our audience a little bit about who you are and the work that you do.
Yeah. So my name is Hunter Flesch. I'm an associate principal here in Des Moines, Iowa. I grew up with a family of educators. So my mom was both my parents are career educators. Dad stayed in the classroom, taught science for his whole career. My mom began as a business teacher and then grew her way to the dark side of administration. And so I was able to really be at the dinner table with them every night, hearing about their experiences in school. And that's really what motivated me to go into education, was seeing the challenges that they faced and the successes too. And really thinking about how could I be a catalyst in kids' lives. So went to Northern Iowa for my undergrad and got my principal licensure from Drake University, and have loved every single minute of my time as an administrator and as a teacher. It's been truly a pleasure getting to know the community and the kids. And I tell you what, and I know we'll talk about it today, but there is a huge space in the administration world to build effective systems and to re-engage teachers in the amazing work. There's this culture and narrative out there about the negativity in education and how hard things are. And yes, it's the hard work, but it's also the right work. And so how can we change people's mindsets? And I think leaders have a really amazing opportunity now more than ever to do that. So I'm excited to talk today, but that's a little bit about me. I host the podcast called the Ed Essentials Podcast, the show where education meets leadership. And I have wonderful people like Casey on the show where we pick each other's brains. We talk about important issues in education today, but really it's about equipping leaders. So if you're an aspiring principal or a currently serving administrator, or district leader, that's the perfect podcast for you. So go check it out. I'm everywhere on social media at Ed Essentials. And then you can listen to amazing people like Casey as well on the show. So,
all right. Now, before we dive in, let's get to the real human part of you. Like, tell our listeners so they can really connect with you. What is a hobby or like some weird, unique thing that makes you totally normal and human?
yeah, I love how you phrase that. So, a hobby for me. So I'm in Iowa, so I like to be outdoors. I do like the hunting and fishing scene. My dad grew up in Minnesota, so we spend a ton of time down at a lake called Sun Valley Lake. We fish down there a bunch. We'll take trips to Minnesota. We're trying to figure out where to go this next year. But yeah, I'm a big outdoors guy. I do love podcasting too. I'm an education nerd, so. I love listening to education podcasts, doing the podcast myself. Yeah, I'm a pretty simple guy. I'm pretty straightforward. I have a dog.
Yeah. Wait, listen, you're not sharing anything that's abnormal.
All right. An abnormal thing about me is that I'm a triplet. But that's not a hobby. Like that's not that's not a hobby. That's just a part of my life. So I have two sisters. One is a professor in California. She teaches air-based chemistry. Sometimes I feel like she's speaking different languages to me and it's still English. I just don't get it. And then my other sister has one baby and another on the way. She's going to be due here in the fall. But she's out in Perry. She's a nurse. So we're all kind of and I started out as a science teacher. So we all kind of navigated our way into the science field. Yeah, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. But yeah, that's my big icebreaker forever is that what's one interesting thing about you? Well, I'm a triplet. So there you go.
You're a triplet. Wow.
I am. Two sisters.
How was two sisters? Do you all look, are you almost identical?
We have similar physical traits, like our nose, our facial structure. But we know otherwise we don't look that much alike. People will see it once they say, oh, I'm a triplet. Oh, I get it now. I see it now. Okay. But yeah, not as cool as the identical triplets but it was nice being the only boy. I got my own room. I got everything to myself. I didn't have to share anything. So that if you can pick how to be a triplet, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, yeah, that's super interesting. Did not know that. So now I know something new about you and unique, even though it's not a quirk, but it is very unique. So we're going to get down to a quirk eventually. So today we'll figure something out. Today we're bringing clarity to fighting fires with framework. So I want you to first talk about what you mean by fighting fires and what you mean by frameworks, because I think sometimes we have ideas about frameworks that are not all aligned.
Definitely. Yeah. And I'm excited to, dig into the definitions because I know you're big on vocabulary and the meaning behind that. So I think I'll gain some clarity today as well. The big thing that I've been thinking about in my time as an associate principal, right? A lot of associate principals out there and the ones that I talk to, the ones that I'm connected with here in Iowa, so many of them, they get shoved into the roles and they say, you get to deal with bus duty, you get to deal with lunch, and you get to deal with behavior. Right. And those are the big things that, associate principals become responsible for. Right. And in my time, as an associate principal, I really found that felt like I was running out all over the building, putting out these fires. I was like number one firefighter, and that was my job. And just to give you kind of an idea, I track all the data, and after my first year, I realized within my data that I was responding to roughly 17 calls a day, right? And that means calls to the office, whether it's for a bathroom break, an elopement, a major referral, right? It could be any spectrum of things, but that means 17 times a day I'm going and trying to put out some level of fire, right? And in no way, in shape, and form is that sustainable. And that doesn't allow me time to get observations done. It doesn't allow me time to coach. It doesn't allow me time to really be the administrator that I want to be, and spend the time with teachers, coaching them and supporting them and being in the classroom in the way that you want to be. So I really came up with this concept of fighting fires with frameworks, because you can't fight a fire alone, and you can't do it just by showing up to school every day waiting for that call to come in, right? So this concept of framework, and I don't know, we can dig into the wording, whether you think of protocol, whether you think of system, I think there's an umbrella of vocabulary there that makes sense. But for me, it was, I can't continue operating the way that I've operated after this first year. There's no way that I can sustain this type of work. And so I really dug into what frameworks and protocols can I use at my disposal? What teams can I develop within my school? What leverage do I have to address this, to really fight the fires within my building? And so we'll dig into the tier 2 team concept. That's something near and dear to my heart that has been a core leverage point within my building. And we've seen really, really good success with it. But really, it's just this concept of you can't fight fires alone. You have to have protocols, you have to have systems, and you have to have teams all in place to help you do that. Otherwise, you're just running around hoping and praying, and that's just not a strategy.
Yeah, I can't count the number of times that I've visited with administrators, and the simple phrase or the simple exchange that happens is, well, how are things going, or how have things been? And the response is, well, I'm just putting out fires left and right, putting out fires. And I'm like, man, that's really not how we should be functioning as administrators. But I think some of that too, and I want to talk about this later, not right now, but I do want to talk about this at some point, is just the word I'm going to use is mob mentality. And you've talked a little bit about it already too, is just the narrative that we've accepted to be true. That doesn't have to be true, but it's what we've always heard. And sometimes when you're in conversation, it's just like when you say, hey, how's it going? And some people respond, oh, it's great. Like, that's just, my gut reaction is to say, oh, it's great. And then I keep going on. For some people, the gut reaction is, oh, it's fighting fires at left and right,
Yes. And the word you made me think of there is busy. Whenever people used to ask me about my first year, being in the role, how's administration going? I'm just so busy. I'm so busy. Like, there's not a better concept or a better phrase or better verbs we can use to describe our day-to-day job. Like, if you had a associate principal write down what are the job duties under, or like that you would list on your resume, right? You're not going to write fight fires. You're not going to write I'm busy, right? So how can we get so clear and specific about what our day should and could look like? And it doesn't mean that, your days aren't busy, and that there will be a big fire some days that you have to address. And I know we'll dig into that here soon, but it's knowing what can my system or my protocol handle, or what's the capacity of it? What are the capacity of my people, and what can I allow them to take on? And then, or what is my number one priority for the day? What is my absolute, I must get this done no matter what? And then this small fire can be pushed off to tomorrow, right?
Yeah, 100%. Okay. So I want to push pause, like put a pin in this conversation and just say to listeners, I know in our episode title, we are talking about how APs can build a sustainable tier 2 system, and instead of thinking about fighting fires, we're using frameworks. But I think it's really probably going to apply to lots of different roles in leadership. So it could be you are a principal, you can glean something from what Hunter has to say. And if you're an instructional coach, probably some of this is sounding familiar to you. Anyone in that leadership capacity typically is aware of many hats and can be a person who's fighting fire. So just open your ears to some of the things that Hunter is going to be sharing. Talk about the tier 2 system.
Yeah, and I'll preface this too. Absolutely. I'll preface it too. Again, my role in my school is large in part behavior. And so when we talk about tier 2, obviously that applies across the board. You could put tier 2 for academics. You could say tier 2 for attendance. You could label tier 2 however you like. So from my lens, it'll be the behavioral lens. When I really think about tier 2, it's the kids who need a little bit more support than your tier 1 instruction, right? Your instruction's high quality, your behavior response is high quality. You're trying these strategies left and right and consistently and with fidelity. I know that's a scary word, fidelity, but you're really giving it your best foot forward. And you're still seeing that, oh man, little Johnny Appleseed, he needs a little bit more support. So when we talk about tier 2, we're not talking about highly customized interventions. We're talking about interventions that I can coach up a teacher on, and then they can go and implement it quickly. It's not something that is super tailored to the kid. It's not super prescribed. It's simply something that we say, yep, you're at this level. That kid looks like they need check and check out. That kid looks like they need, a behavior contract, whatever that might look like. And there is, I call it a little tier 2 plus. It's kind of a fringe between tier 2 and tier 3. Are there little levers and little ways that we can be customized with tier 2? Yes, we try to be as flexible when we can be. But for the most part, when I'm coaching teachers on tier 2, how can I keep it prescribed and how can I keep it simple and consistent across our system? So when we're all talking about, hey, Johnny needs check and check out, here's exactly what that looks like. It's not deviating and different in all these other teachers' classrooms.
Yeah. Okay. I so appreciate that definition of tier 2, just from your perspective. And I think one of the things I love about it is we're still looking at what are practices that our people are implementing and not necessarily what is a program that we're going to put in place to solve the issues that we're experiencing. So let's talk about mistakes that leaders make when they're trying to support tier 2 students, and how can frameworks help?
Yeah. I think one of the big mistakes we made in the beginning was, well, not being clear on what tier 2, tier 3 even means. I mean, I know the tiered system is, some people look down upon it. Some people are all about it. Really, for us, it's a way of clarifying our actions. Okay. The first big thing that we had to do was gather data and figure out what are we even working with right now. I think in the beginning, we just blanketed tier 2, everyone, no matter what, you're at this behavioral level, you're getting check and check out no matter what. And it's because our staff, that was their capacity. That's the intervention that they knew. Did it even meet the function of some of our kids that were demonstrating some behavioral struggles? Absolutely not. So that was a big reflection point for us, was we have this data in front of us, yet we're using it to assign interventions that don't make sense for kids, right? Yeah. So that was a big mistake that I think that we have rectified. You have to be clear on what you're providing kids. Why am I going to ask a teacher we talk about heavy lifts all the time, right? What am I going to put on their plate that they're going to have to lift up and carry out if I know that it's not even meeting the function of the kid's behavior? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that was a big mistake. I'd say really understand what you're asking your teachers to do and what their capacity was. I would also say when we initially got all of our data, based on what we had, we were at like 8 to 10% of our kids were flagging as tier 3. So, oh my gosh, how are we even going to talk about tier 2 when we're burning up at the top, right? So that showed me that our staff wasn't quite ready in the first year to learn about check and check out or learn about class pass interventions when they had all these tier 3 concerns. So those are a couple of big mistakes that I think that, if you're an associate principal listening or an instructional leader listening, get clear with your data, get clear with your teacher's capacity and where are the appropriate lifts and what's that lift that's going to take place later on. Be strategic about it. Yeah.
Here are a couple of things that I wrote down. Bummer. I just lost where I was starting to, here's the problem. I was starting to write something that you just said, and then I was about to say what other thing that you'd said, and I kind of lost my train of thought, but I'm going to go ahead
It'll come back.
It'll come back. But one of the things that you said, this is totally quotable, by the way. Our tiered system is about clarifying our actions. That is so incredibly powerful. And so many people need to latch on to that idea of a tiered system. My gosh, if I could like paint it on a poster and put it in schools, I totally would, but then it would just become wall art. But I'm going to say that that's probably one of the most important things I'm taking away from this episode. And you better believe I'm going to be crediting this to you as I share it with other people. And I really do appreciate too, like, what does the data say about our capacity? And you've used the word data, so I'm going to shift my language. Data. What does the data say about our capacity and what teachers are able to implement or not ready to implement?
Yeah.
So powerful.
It was big for us, and in the beginning, I developed this quote unquote tier 2 team, right? You could call it your MTSS behavior team. You could call it whatever you want it. Like for me, the label doesn't matter as much. I just call it the tier 2 team. But what we do is it's a decision-making team. It really helps. And it's with grade level representatives. I think if you're an AP that's listening and you're thinking about where do I start, get out of your office and start talking to the teachers that want to make a difference with behavior. If you've got the culture and if you've got even just 2 other people, 1 other person, it doesn't matter. Just start. Luckily enough, I feel like we've got a great culture in our building, so I was able to get, and really I didn't even have to ask too hard. I said, hey, Miss Jensen, you want to help out with the tier 2 team and just help with behavioral kids in our school? Absolutely I do, because those teachers want to make a difference and they care about their teammates and want to take part in our goals, right? They want to take part in our building success. So the tier 2 team is consisted of grade level representatives. I have our school social worker, our school counselor, our AEA folks that come and support as well. And so everyone has a voice at the table, but what we've gotten really good at is figuring out, okay, we have our data, right? And we just look at a cross array of data. So I pull it directly from Panorama and I organize it and I say, okay, we're assigning a risk score to Johnny Appleseed. Here's his academics, here's his attendance, here's his behavior. And then what are the current interventions across the board that he's getting? Because is this behavior really an academic problem? If so, we're not going to spend our time necessarily, digging into little Johnny because we know it's struggling from academics, right? We're going to go back to the teacher and say, hey, we know that this is happening during ELA. His vocabulary is really struggling. So how can we implement an intervention around that? Or how can we provide some support around that? And our tier 2, we call it flood in our building. Almost every kid receives some sort of intervention. So we're very particular about what we're providing, when we're providing it, and doing it consistently. So we know the academics are being covered, but it allows us as the tier 2 team to back off and say, no, that's not where we need to focus our attention right now. Right.
Yeah.
Here's the fire that we actually need to address.
Yeah. I think that's going to lead really well into what I want to talk about next, because assistant principals because they do have a wide variety of things under their umbrella. They have to balance urgency with sustainability. They're addressing both behavior and academic needs. And I think sometimes, I want you to talk about this, but I think sometimes how do I want to say this? It's like we compartmentalize a lot of different things where it has to be one or the other, or it's this thing and then this thing. So I just want to hear your thoughts about all of that.
Yeah. So, and some of that comes with experience and time. So if you're a new principal or a new associate principal and you're still figuring it out, that's okay. I'm still figuring it out too. One thing, Casey, that's been so helpful for me that I lean back on is, what's my principal's expectations? What is my principal's priorities for his day and his mission and his job so he can be successful? That has been super helpful for me, because then I can say, okay, if this is Mr. Vaughn's priority, I better make sure that I'm protecting that, right? So his big thing is, Hunter, I want you to take on, and he gives me a ton of flexibility, a ton of creativity, and allows me to kind of take things the direction that I want to take it. So that's great. But his big thing is he wants to prioritize instructional time in the classroom so he can coach, so he can push the academic rigor of our building.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so that for me is easy. If that means that I have to take an extra recess duty so he can observe, that's what I'm going to do. So
Yeah.
if you're sitting here and you're listening and you're thinking, oh man, I don't really know what my principal wants from me, or I don't really know what my principal is, their expectations are, that's a good conversation to have. Because that for me also, it takes a lot of the internal struggle away. Yes, I would love to be more of an instructional leader, and I as we get the behavior under control, I can start to do that. But I had to
Yeah.
have a vision for that in the beginning. I'd also say too, like there are things that will just come up day to day that you have to be okay letting other people handle. So having a really clear understanding in your mind of what's the behavior that, and again, I just speak from the behavior lens. What's the behavior that I'm okay letting go because I know teacher A has to grow their capacity in that? Or
Mhm.
can I spend a little bit of time after school coaching that teacher up in the beginning so that way that behavior isn't an office call in the future? It's something that they know that that's not something that I'm going to be addressing or that I'm going to be responding to in instantly because they're making that call. There's some
Yeah.
of that unlearning, I think, in the beginning, especially for people, in kind of my situation where that behavior is so overwhelming. There's a lot of that paralysis, right?
Mhm.
And almost by like you're paralyzing yourself. Like APs will paralyze themselves because they just are responding, and they're not stopping. They just continue to go deeper into the flames. So that's where we talk about having that internal hierarchy of needs, almost of this is my number
Yeah.
one. The last thing I'll say on this too is you almost start taking on a roster of kids. Like who are the
Mhm.
kids that are going to be on my roster that I know that's my, like, I've got this kid no matter what. This is going to be
Yeah.
the one that I've got to respond to because I've got the relationship with them, or because you know that you have the authority to leverage things or make decisions that a teacher cannot.
Right.
So I don't know. Hopefully that answered your question. There's a lot there, but
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, we have a tendency to bring with us prior experiences with people. So, for what I mean by that is if you are new to your position, so you're new to assistant principal, or it could be instructional coach or principal, people are only familiar with their prior experiences with people in those positions. So you have to, it's like you're kind of setting a brand new stage for yourself, and you've got to figure out, what is the stage going to look like? Who's going to be on this stage with me? When am I going to have to go out into the audience? When are the spotlights going to be on? When are they going to be off? When am I going to close the curtain? All of the things, you have to think about that because you're really creating new narratives for the people that you're working with. Um, it sounds like you work a lot in collaboration. Like, collaboration is obviously very important to you. You've mentioned that even in just recently in talking about coaching up teachers, going out to teachers to ask about their participation in like your tier two teams. So I'm curious about how building a strong tier two system improves that collaboration across your entire campus.
yeah, and this concept of it, this idea of addressing behavior in schools, it's not done in isolation. That's the theme of it all. So my tier two team, we're not just meeting by ourselves in some conference room. We're connecting with teachers. Those teachers are going back to their PLCs and updating on, hey, we've talked about student A. They're going to be receiving this intervention. How can I help coach you in that? Or nope, you've got it. Perfect. Let's go. Or oh, you're struggling with parent communication. How can I support you with this? Big thing that my tier two team gave me feedback on was wanting to be able to get in front of staff on our PD days. We do a 4-day school week. That's been a big revolution for our district as well. And so now we've got a little bit more time to strategically plan around our kids. And that was a
Mhm.
big push this year, was getting teachers to spend some quality time just thinking about how am I supporting behavior in my classroom, right? And
Yeah.
so that was year one, but now year two, we want our tier two team leading professional development, right? They want to talk about how I can make an effective parent phone call. They want to talk about how can I make sure my check and check out plans are done effectively. How can I incorporate these tier one strategies that maybe I'm forgetting about, or maybe that I need to brush up on to be even more effective? So it's really going beyond me addressing behavior. And there's that mindset of, well, you're the AP, you've got to deal with it, right? And that's
Yeah.
how some people think, and that's how, and like you said, that might be a narrative or a way, like a prior experience from the past, right? For associate
Hmm.
principals from before, they always did it, they took care of it, or they removed the kid from the classroom, and now it's their problem, right?
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so there's a lot there. I just think for me, it was in the beginning, I had to take off this idea that I'm going to be the savior and fix everything, because you can't. You have to have a bit of an ego check. Because think about it, most assistant principals get into those jobs because they're great with kids. They're probably great teachers who want to help people, but um, with that positive sort of mindset or that positive intention, that's actually killing you, which is
Yeah.
scary to think about. But you're not going to be able to sustain your job until you put the ownership on more people. And so, and if you do it in the right way, if you do it collaboratively, which I feel like we've done, my gosh, they're really taking it and running with it. And now this concept of behavior is not a me, but a we.
Yeah. Yeah, you are describing, I talk about the vision curve in my book. And so it's really this idea of we've got to go from, a lot of us do a lot of vision casting. So we're really trying to cast the vision to our people through communication. We're talking about it, talking about it, talking about it, but we very rarely get to the point where people are committed and they're the ones actually carrying the vision. But it sounds like that's what a lot of your people are doing, especially if they're asking, hey, let us get in front of people so that we can support them. And it's a wide variety of people that are wanting to support, and a wide variety of topics that are necessary and imperative to your specific needs. Um, I want to close by talking about mindsets, because that is really the hardest piece that we have to get past, right? Is changing mindsets in order for us to move from reactive problem solving to proactive systems thinking. What are some shifts that, or how can we even start to make those shifts, especially for people who are about to go back into the school year and getting started fresh as an AP or leader?
Mindsets are so challenging, Casey, because they're so well. And I don't know if unique is the right word, but you're dealing with humans
Mm-hmm.
and past experiences and levels of. And I like using these terms a lot with behavior, especially, but really you could say teaching in general. Um, Teachers struggle with confidence and competence, and so much of a teacher's mindset is encapsulated by those words. How
Mm-hmm.
confident are they in dealing with little Johnny? Are they afraid of Johnny? Right? Like, is there a skill issue? Are they not feeling competent enough? Because Todd Whitaker always talks about this. If you have a teacher that's a sage on the stage and they're lecturing for 50 minutes and kids are struggling in their class, well, you know what? The teacher's doing that most likely because they believe that's the best strategy that they have. So
Yeah.
how can we give them the confidence to branch out and try something new? So, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of different ways you can go about that, but ultimately, Casey, it's pretty simple in my mind from what I've seen in my building is you have to have an honest conversation with the teacher. It's not a gotcha, it's I got you. And so like I'm very clear and open and honest, and I'm visible in classrooms. I think if you don't have that open door policy in your school, start showing up and start talking with teachers. Like just get in the weeds with them.
Hmm.
I think a lot of the trust that an associate principal can build with their staff is by the types of conversations you have, but also how you show up for teachers, right?
Yeah.
It goes beyond just removing a kid from the classroom or dealing with the problem and then like the teacher thinking that you fixed it. It's having a genuine conversation with hey, teacher A, I'm really just here to help you. I noticed that you are letting Johnny Appleseed in the back of the classroom kind of doze off. What's going on there? Tell me more about your day. Is something going on outside of school? And I can't tell you how many times when I've talked with teachers about, they had a rough week in the classroom or they're really struggling with the student and it's not even related to the student. It's something going on outside that is stressful to them that they're bringing into the school.
Yeah.
But you can't understand their mindset if you're not having those conversations. And so I know it's so hard and there's not like a recipe for it, for being in tune with your staff and being connected with your staff, but you just have to get out of your office and start talking to them. That's been so important for me. And I'll just say this too, especially for a young associate principal, if you're a motivated young individual that's going into a highly veteran staff, you're going to have to really prove it to them. You don't have to know it all, but you do have to show up and you do have to be consistent and really get to know them, because there are a lot of staff that are veteran that will make those judgment calls on you quickly. So you've really got to make sure that you're going in with an open mind, that you're going in with a clear vision about who you are, how you want to respond. But again, at the end of the day, when we talk about mindset, you just have to understand your people, connect with them, balance their priorities with the buildings, right? And try to navigate those as respectfully and best as you can, but don't deviate from the ultimate mission and vision, which is student success. And if a teacher has that mindset too, if they're not willing to change, I don't think it's too far to say that the associate principals and principals have to hold that line too. So there are the mindsets that eat at culture. And so are you having those conversations too? So
yeah. My gosh, so much good stuff in this episode. I have loved this conversation so much. And I know this is one of those times where I'm like, all right, so let's talk about this now. But we're going to close here because we can't have we could have an hour podcast. We're not going to do that because I'm committed to keeping these relatively brief. But I do want to mention that, so you brought up confidence and competence. And I love that you brought that up. I hear so often that idea that our teachers are lacking confidence, but we have to build their competence in order to build their confidence. And I have a colleague, my go-to phrase is always clarity precedes capacity. And I wholeheartedly believe that. But one of my former colleagues often said competency precedes capacity. And it's so true. And I'm just going to take it a little bit further because we have to have clarity about what we're building competence in before we can start to try to support people. Anyway, this has been absolutely fantastic. Hunter, where can our people that are listening find you?
You can find me all over the place. So my website is edessentials.net. You can learn a little bit more about what I do. You can connect with me there. I'm on social media, mainly Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. I've got X, but I'm, rarely on there if you just search Ed Essentials. But what I'd really love for listeners is send me an email or just a message. So my email is edessentials.network@gmail.com, or just shoot me a message on social media. The big thing that I'd love to do is just learn more about your situation, learn what are the struggles, what are the current challenges, or what's your mission and vision for your role as an administrator, and then how can I help you with that? That's the big thing, is I really love connecting with people. I've been so blessed over the years to have so many educators pour into me and my growth and development. I wanted to do the same for you. So connect with me there, and I'd be happy to talk to you.
Yeah, this has been so great. Hunter, thank you for coming on.
Awesome. It's been an honor, Casey. Thank you.
All right. Bye, everybody. Hey there. Thanks for joining this episode. I would love for you to do me 3 solid favors before you head out. Number 1, subscribe to this show. I've got a lot of great guests and content coming up, and I don't want you to miss any of it. Number 2, share this show. Share it with your like-minded colleagues and friends who want to learn how to lead clarity-driven teams. And finally, connect with me on all the social media platforms. You can find me at Catch Up with Casey on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Until next time, go off and create teams that leave people feeling inspired, empowered, and eager for more each day.